There, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Today we're back. We're continuing on book 5, and today we're looking at chapter 4, which again deals with as the 4 deals with is corrections, the questions of the voluntary, questions of justice as a corrective, and the voluntary versus the involuntary. So let's turn to it. The remaining form of just is corrective, which occurs in transactions, both voluntary and involuntary. So therefore, transactions or activities, this is the question that we did. He did basically, the question of the forms of justice. This is the last remaining form, corrective justice. And this deals with transactions, correcting the transactions that are, that something did a transaction, either was voluntary, involuntary, and the question, therefore, correcting it, right? The just in this sense has a different form than the previous one. For the just in the distribution of things held in common always accords with the proportion spoken of. So therefore, in other words, the question of the things just regarding the things, the use of common things, what is held in common? Again, this is the question. The use of justice in this sense, the question of what? The distribution of things held in common. This is politics in essence. Political activity is the concern of how do you distribute the things that are the goods, the common goods, the things held in common. Okay, the distribution of the common good. Okay, the common benefits, the common held in that sense. And therefore, this is an always accord with the proportions. This idea of proportionality of this. And in fact, if the distribution comes out of common resources, it will accord with the same ratio that the contributions have towards each other. So therefore, the idea that if everything's coming out of resources, then the question is, well, maybe the ratio should be based on how much people contributed to things. In other words, the famous each could, that the ratio you get will depending upon what you contribute. So things that all equally have contributed equally, right? They should be done equally. But things that people have that have different proportions of contribution to the common entity, well, then maybe the question of how they're distributed should equal the proportionality, right? This is the idea here in that sense, right? The unjust is opposite to the just, and in this sense, contrary to the proportion. So therefore, if if everyone gives about the equal amount, or gives the equality of what is to be done that's going to be distributed, then it'd be giving any differentiation of things would be unequal, would be unjust. But if people have given things unequal, in other words, the thing that's being distributed, it has been given to people by different amounts, and not everyone is given the same, right? Given the same towards the common, then to distribute everything equally would be unjust in this sense. Likewise, to distribute what some have given more to give more to those who contributed less, and less to those who contributed more would I likewise be unjust in this sense. So this idea of proportional justice in terms of the distribution is a thing in that sense. Now, in the just in transaction, there is a certain equality, and the unjust, a certain inequality. Yet not in accord with proportion just indicated, but in according with the arithmetic one. Okay, and so forth. In other words, justice in transactions, right? Therefore, it's not the proportionality; it may be the arithmetic that we've agreed to. If we've agreed that I get 5 and you get 4, and then you don't give me the 5 and you don't get your 4, what you agreed to, there is something broken here. It's unjust. For it makes no difference at all whether a decent. Oh, sorry for the interruption. My wife came with a Pepsi for me. For me, and I need the Pepsi, I need the caffeine, man. I need the caffeine. I was kind of like, okay. I made a lemonade, and then a little bit of instant lemonade for the water. I had a packet from years ago that kind of good. But let's go back to the text, right? He says that's this line. This comes out of common resource, and it will some ratio would be contribution to, will have towards each other. The unjust is the opposite of the just in the sense of what is contrary to proportion. The just in transactions, there's a certain equality and the unjust a certain inequality, yet not in regards to proportion as is indicated, right? But in accordance with arithmetic. For it makes no difference at all whether a decent person robs a base one or a base person a decent one, or if a decent person or a base person commit adultery. In other words, what the question is somebody did something to do something. An act was done, something specific was done, and what was done was unjust. And this is what he says. This is why it's weird to talk about this as arithmetic, not proportion. It's not a question of proportion. It's a question of, well, you took something, you did something. I subtracted something, or I did something. I added something that shouldn't have been added, or I took something that should not have been taken. And it's the doing of it that is the problem, right? The whether robbing a person doesn't matter whether the person is decent or base, right? And it doesn't matter if it's decent a person someone commits adultery. Rather, the law looks only at the difference between that stems from the harm done, and it treats persons as equals. Colon. If the one person acts unjustly and the other suffers injustice, and if the one did the harm, the other was harmed. So the question of in other words, the question is not the quality of who's doing it or the difference between what is doing. The action is this one's doing it, and there's an equality here. This is the equality of the law, right? This is what we mean by the equality of the law. The law treats the lawful and the unlawful. There is a certain exception that we're not going to care about the proportion, whether you're decent or good, or it doesn't matter whether you're a good person or a bad person. If you've committed harm, if you've harmed somebody and therefore broke the law or broke a rule, broke a norm, then you're going to be punished. Okay, because those who do harm will get punished. So that rather the law looks only to the difference that stem from the harm done and treats people as equal, that line. As a result, since the unjust in this sense is an inequality, the judge tries to restore the equality. So restore, this is the idea that I've done you some harm, so I need to restore. Now this is, in English law, this is, I'll make this point here. In English law, we have the concept of torts, damages. Civil law. This is not a criminal law. This is in the civil law that we have. I have done you some harm. I've done you harm. A does harm to other. This is a dispute of harm and damages that are brought between the civil courts. The criminal harm. The difference is harm to the society at large. That's the difference. That's criminal law is harm done to the people or the community, whereas civil law does the question of harm to individuals, right? Well, and I think this is an interesting problem because the Greeks don't, they don't see, they treat both as kind of the same in that sense, right? We'll see. Um, For indeed, if one person is struck and the other strikes, or if he also kills him and the other dies, the suffering and the doing involved are divided into unequal segments. So therefore, I strike and you struck. I kill and he's killed, right? These things are. But the judge tries to restore equality by inflicting a loss, whereby taking away the gain, right? So therefore, the word zima, which means penalty, right? Here is a loss, a penalty, inflicting a zima, a penalty. Why don't you just use penalty? I would have, instead of a loss. Well, it is a loss in that sense, taking away, a penalty. From a gain, in other words. And the term gain is used as a way of speaking simply in such circumstances. if even if a certain person, even if in certain cases it would not be proper to name, for example, the person who struck another. Um, the term of loss, right? This is that of azima, is used for him who suffered, right? The loss is the sufferer. The person who did the act gains, right? The actor who act wrongly made some benefit from it, got something from this. Again, this is the idea. And therefore, the person who gets loss. But anyway, whether the suffering is measured and one is called a loss and another a gain, right? Right. As a result, the equal is a middle term with respect to what is more or less, while the gain and the loss are more and less in opposite ways, on opposite ways. So therefore, a middle term with respect to what is more and less, while the gain and the loss are more and less in opposite ways. More of the good and less of the bad is gain, right? So in other words, I take more of something of a good benefit than I should. I take a benefit, something that was beneficial, or I take less. I don't. I should be receive more. I should receive some negative things, loss. Um, uh, uh, um, the more of a good and the less of a bad is gain, and the reverse. The less of a good and more of a bad is a loss. Right. The middle term with respect to these is, as we know, the equal. Right, which is to say the just. As a result, the just is corrective. Now, this is 15. Here, the word seems to use a slightly different word for corrective. And this is why. This is ep, epen orthotikos. That's right. Versus deal orthotikos. So therefore, it's a slightly. The question is this really a new word, or is this an error, textual error? This has been always a question here. The question here is this reference is corrective, that the just is here he uses FN orthotekos, not dia ortho. So therefore this is, dia means usually two of this, right? There's two up. Now here is this epa. Epa means more than, I think, in that sense. So therefore this is why it's corrective. It corrects in the sense. I can see that this is where the term correction comes from, right? Orthotokos, right? But the question is this epan, the epan here. I'm not going to challenge his corrective use. I think it is corrective in that sense. The just then is corrective would be the middle term when it comes to loss and gain, right? Hence, when people dispute with one another, they find refuge before a judge. Therefore, this is the question. This is the people who dispute. You've harmed me. I should have gotten this. We have a dispute between people over harm, over either that someone has gotten more than he should have, or has gotten less than he should ought have, right? To go to a judge is to go to the just, for the judge wishes to be, as it were, the just in soul. In other words, the judge should try to be the embodiment of justice, right? The people seek a judge in a middle way, mesos. Seek a judge as a middle way, a mesos, translated here in the sentence, a middle way, the same terms as middle term, right? In a middle way, as a meson, as judge as a meson, mid, of course. And some call them mediators on the ground that if they hit on the middle term, they will have hit on the just. So the mediator, this is what we argue, mediate, to seek the middle, the middle ground in that sense, the middle term. And hence they hit upon the middle term, they hit on the just. The just, therefore, is a certain middle way. If in fact if in fact the judge is as well, if in fact the judge is as well. So in other words, that it has to be a moderator mediating in it. The just is therefore a certain middle way, if in fact the judge is as well. So therefore the judge must also be of a certain quality. He must seek justice, right? But he also must not be, too extreme in either one for punishment. The judge also restores equality. The judge also restores equality in the in the case of a line cut into unequal parts. One subtracts that by which the larger part exceeds the half and adds it to the smaller part. So therefore, the judge acts like, okay, that I'm going to exceed there. It makes it equal. In other words, he tries to make it equal. When the whole is divided into two, then people assert that they have what is theirs whenever they receive what is equal. The equal is the middle term of the larger and the smaller in accord with arithmetic proportion. So therefore, this is that idea, this is that moment that when when the whole is divided into two, then people assert that they have what is theirs whenever they receive what is equal. The equal is the middle term of the larger, right? It is the middle term of the larger thing. And the smaller in accord to the arithmetic proportion, right? On this account as well, it has its name, just, diakon, because it is divided into two, dika. Very interesting. And actually, this. Okay, first of all, I think that this is important that we understand why two. Why always two? Because he's talking about transaction. An individual transaction is a transaction between a doer and a receiver. So there is a duality here in this sense. So therefore, the frame of what is being discussed here is transactions. A transaction is an action between an actor and a receiver. So there is a binary character to this. And this is why it's divided in the way of the two always here, right? Um, uh, because it's divided into two, dichta. Just as if one were to say divided, decon, and of the judge, the decay test. So it's decay, just. Right? It's all derived decay. This idea of decay, dicha, is playing with the words here. And of the judge, that he is a divider, a dichteke, so 17. Aristotle's etymology is suspect. Okay? He is obviously plays on the term dicta, dictes, and dictas as if the judge were a divider. But the root of dictas is of dicton, and the die is not a dicta as he suggests here. According to Alexander of Aphrodisia, Aristotle's epistemology here has um, paragrathy. Okay, I know the word. Oh God, this is the famous. Oh come on, the famous equation. Uh, uh, I can't pronounce it. I've lost the word. I know it. I grew up with it. Pyrogathian. Okay, this famous equation in geometry, and in trigonometry, right? Uh, uh, Pythagoras, Pythagorean. Okay, Pythagorean roots. In that sense, so therefore, there's a play of game. There's a kind of right here. There's a play here, and this is a purposely uh, 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 Pythagorean playing around. So why is he pointing to the probable correction of that there is something that Pythagoras is right about here, in that sense that in terms of justice? So that's a question. This is a very the wordplay here, very Heideggerian wordplay, right? That we see Aristotle engaging in here is not is suspect. there's something, and as I think Bartlett and I think Bartlett is the point in kind. I think Bartlett is right here. There is something suspect here. For when two equal things, so for when why is this two? Why does he play the two? And I think maybe he's trying to suggest that the emphasis of transaction and distributive corrective justice in terms of this, because the problem is what yes, it's the two, the action, but maybe it's more than two at the same time. Therefore, this is the problem here, that the kind of conception of what is being done is framed within two, but then the fact that who is being involved may be more than two, right? So, and this is why and therefore there is something by the way he's accounting this makes sense, but in terms of justice, the question of the words themselves is suspect. So let's continue. For when of two equal things, a part is subtracted from one and added to another, then the latter exceeds by twice the part subtracted from. For if the one is subtracted from, but the other not added to, then the latter exceeds only by one. Therefore, the latter exceeds the middle term by one, and the middle term exceeds the one subtracted from by one. By this, then, we will know both what we ought to subtract from the person who has the greater share, and what we ought to add to him who has the lesser share, the lesser. We ought to add that which exceeds the middle term to the person with the lesser, and to subtract the one who has the greatest by that by which the middle term is exceeded. So, therefore, this idea that you should only take the one who has the greatest thing exceeded by the words the subtracted from the one who has the greatest, that by which the middle term exceeded, right? So therefore, in the lines A to A, and B to B, and gamma to gamma, alpha to alpha, uh, uh, um, and beta to beta, and gamma to gamma, being equal to one another, subtract alpha alpha, the part A E, and add it to y gamma gamma, as to the part of the whole D, y gamma gamma, exceeds A by d delta gamma and delta lambda. I think that's lambda. Yeah, lambda. Hence, BB and dy. Now here's the lines would be as follows. He needs to give you the map here. Okay, A to A, B to B, Y to Y. Okay, A to E would be then here added to this, would be the equation of that to that. Okay, so therefore, this is the example. The lines would follow in this way. With Bywater, we emit what appears to be the interpolation from 1133A14 16. This is the case also in the other arts, for they would perish if the maker did not make both so much and of such kind and such a kind of a given product, and the recipient did not receive both the same amount and the same kind of product. So therefore, there is a bit of line here. In other words, he's stopping. He's doing two things. He's doing that, and he's not adding these lines of text. Okay, this interpolation here. Now let's continue. These names, both loss and gain, have come from voluntary transactions, right? For those who have more than what of what is one's own is spoken of as gain, and to have less than what one had at the beginning is suffering a loss. In buying and selling, for example, as in many other transactions, as the law has permitted. When people have neither more nor less, but the very thing that they have contributed, they declare they have what is their own, and that they have neither suffered a loss nor a gain. In other words, if they have what they contributed, that they never suffered a loss or a gain. As As a result, in transactions that are contrary to what is voluntary, the just is a middle term between a certain gain and a certain loss. That is to have what is equal both before and after the transaction, right? To have what is equal both before a transaction and after a transaction. So this is the question of the voluntary, right? This is so he begins in other words, even though he talks about this things about involuntary and voluntary, the most of his transactions seems to be focused on the voluntary transactions that occur, and the question of the justice of whether it is in proportion to gain and the outcome of this. So here we stop our thing. We end here. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below. If you have any issues that you want me to address, and I don't think you want more further elaboration, please put it below, and we'll talk about it. Maybe address it. If you've liked it, hit the like button. Hit the like button, please. Share it far and wide. It helps if the more people like this, the greater this gets higher on the algorithms, and people might be able to see it more. People who searching things for, oh, this may be interesting. Please check it out. Then what happens? Another thing is that please, if you've not subscribed, please subscribe. Encourage others to subscribe. Let's grow the channel. It would help to grow the channel some more. If you didn't, now of course you didn't like it, you can always hit thumbs down. But please say what's wrong, and what in the comments. Why this way people can be, people can learn. If I can learn, or maybe the watchers can learn on something in that sense. So please do that. Now, another thing you can do is you can follow me on social media. The links are below. If you want to know more about me as an academic and a scholar and my research and follow my research, you can look at the academic social media links that has links to my research and scholarship. Another thing you can do is if you want to financially help what I do, contribute in this way to continue what I do in that sense, to help pay for things, then please do go to subscribe to our Patreon or buy one of my books listed below. The links are below. You can buy the books either at your local bookstore, because I list the articles. I don't put links to things because I thought it would be unfair. Or you can go to an online bookseller of your choice, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or whatever, and order a copy. If you want to buy the Lulu book, it would be best that you buy it directly by Lulu, because I would get the profit that the bookstores get. That's so we want to help me in that way. There's particularly those who are studying Aristotle's politics and things like that. The Lulu book would be essentially very good for people studying Aristotle's politics in that sense. I hope you all do well. We continue next time you see us in chapter 5. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.